Subscribe to Wartime Survival, comment your thoughts below, and share this with someone who takes history and preparedness seriously, because what we're about to cover is not trivia, not folklore, and not theory. This is a proven material science solution used by Viking Age builders, shipwrights, and warriors who depended on wood staying solid in saltwater, frozen soil, and constant moisture. If you care about real historical knowledge that still applies today, this is for you. For the next few minutes, stay with me closely, because this is one of those subjects that quietly rewrites what we think we know about primitive engineering and exposes just how much practical knowledge has been lost in modern construction. Modern builders rely heavily on pressure-treated lumber, synthetic sealants, and chemical preservatives that promise longevity but often fail in wet, anaerobic or extreme environments. The Vikings faced those exact conditions daily, yet their ships, buildings and tools survived decades of brutal exposure. Some have endured over 1,000 years underground or underwater. That survival wasn't luck. It was the result of a specific rot-proofing process centered around pine tar, wood ash lye, heat, and deep material understanding. This was not a surface coating. It was a wood dip that altered the structure of the timber itself. Why Viking builders needed a rot-proof solution that modern methods still struggle to match. Viking society depended on wood more than almost any other medieval culture. Longships, cargo vessels, halls, fortifications, weapons, storage chests, bridges, docks and tools were all timber-based. Much of this wood lived in damp coastal climates where rot fungi thrive. Oak, pine and spruce were abundant but untreated. They decay quickly in moisture-rich environments. The Vikings didn't have the luxury of replacing structures constantly. Timber had to last. Archaeological analysis of Viking ships like the Oseberg and Gokstad vessels shows heavy saturation of pine tar within the wood fibres themselves. This is critical. Modern sealants sit on the surface and eventually crack, peel or trap moisture. Viking treatment penetrated deeply, filling capillaries inside the wood with hydrophobic compounds that fungi cannot digest. Now, let's talk about what the Viking rot-proof wood dip actually was, and, well, why it worked so remarkably well. At the core of the Viking method was pine tar, which they produced by slowly heating resin-rich pine roots and heartwood in low-oxygen pits or kilns. This process, you see, yielded a thick, sticky, antiseptic tar that's rich in phenols, resins, and natural fungicides. Unlike modern petroleum-based preservatives, pine tar remains flexible, breathable, and, crucially, biologically hostile to decay organisms. The wood dip itself, was not simply cold tar brushed on. Viking builders would heat the pine tar until it became thin and mobile, and they'd often mix it with wood ash lye or animal fats, depending on the application. Heated timber was then immersed or heavily soaked while still warm. This thermal differential caused the wood to absorb the tar deeply as it cooled, effectively locking the preservative inside. Now, here's the fascinating part: how this treatment altered the wood instead of just coating it. This process didn't merely protect the surface, it actually changed how the wood interacted with moisture. Pine tar repels water while still allowing vapor exchange, which prevents the trapped moisture conditions that modern paints and sealants tend to create. Fungi, as you may know, require oxygen and consistent moisture. Viking treated wood, quite simply, denied both. Studies of preserved Viking timbers show reduced cellulose breakdown and inhibited microbial activity even centuries later. This isn't just some theoretical durability, you know. It's measured, documented survival across time. Now, how did Viking shipbuilders actually apply the treatment in practice? Ship planks were often treated before assembly, especially in high-risk areas like keels, strakes near the waterline, and joints. Tar was reheated regularly during construction and maintenance too. Longships weren't simply sealed once and forgotten. They were maintained cyclically, with reapplication based on use, climate, and exposure. This is, honestly, an important lesson modern builders tend to ignore. Longevity comes from intelligent maintenance, not from so-called permanent chemical solutions that degrade silently over time. So, let's talk about how, even today, modern builders and survivalists can still apply this method. You know, this knowledge is definitely not obsolete. If you're building, say, a shed, a root cellar, a raised garden bed, a dock, some fence posts, or even tool handles meant for, well, wet environments, pine tar treatment actually outperforms many modern options out there. A practical application involves gently heating raw pine tar in a metal container, warming the wood in the sun or with indirect heat, and then applying the tar generously until absorption slows. And honestly, making multiple passes over several hours really helps deepen penetration. For ground contact wood, especially posts, this method can dramatically extend service life without leaching toxins into soil or water. Unlike pressure-treated lumber, it's safe to use around food storage, livestock, and of course, human habitation. So, why did modern construction abandon this knowledge? Well, the shift toward industrial speed, standardization, and chemical dependency really pushed these slow, skill-based methods aside. Pine tar production, after all, is quite labour-intensive. It just doesn't fit mass production timelines. Yet the irony is clear. Viking-treated wood outlasts many modern materials in exactly the environments where modern builders struggle the most. Well, modern treatments often fail catastrophically. Viking treatments, on the other hand, they fail gradually and visibly, which gives time for repair rather than, sudden structural loss. For survival contexts, that distinction really does matter. So, what this teaches us about historical intelligence and survival engineering is actually quite profound. The Vikings were not just guessing, They observed how materials behaved over generations and, refined their processes accordingly. This wasn't superstition at all. It was, in fact, empirical engineering. When modern survivalists talk about resilient systems, they often, perhaps unknowingly, describe Viking principles: simplicity, repairability, material honesty, and environmental compatibility. Learning this method isn't about, romanticizing the past. It's really about reclaiming tested solutions that, modern convenience discarded a bit too soon. Why this knowledge still matters in a fragile world is actually quite simple. Supply chains fail, chemical treatments become unavailable, regulations change. Pine tar can be produced with just basic tools, local materials, and a bit of time. That alone, honestly, makes it invaluable for long-term resilience planning. If you build, store, or depend on wooden structures in harsh environments, this knowledge gives you an edge rooted in, well, centuries of success. Subscribe to Wartime Survival for more deep dives into forgotten wartime, ancient and survival-tested knowledge that, still works when modern systems don't. Comment below if you want a dedicated episode on making pine tar from scratch or applying Viking preservation methods step by step. And of course, share this with anyone who still believes ancient builders were primitive.